In this video, we'll explore the timeless lessons on wealth from The Richest Man in Babylon by George Samuel Clason, one chapter at a time. This book isn't filled with money jargon. It's full of timeless wisdom, passed down through the ages using simple, unforgettable stories that feel as familiar as your own life. These stories will make you think, they'll make you smile, and most of all, they'll show you how to finally take charge of your money. This book is set in the world's wealthiest ancient city, Babylon, nearly 4,000 years ago. You'll meet characters like Akkad, the richest man in Babylon, who started with nothing and built a fortune. But here's where it gets even more interesting. These timeless lessons didn't come from a celebrity CEO or a best-selling finance guru. They came from a quiet man named George Samuel Clason, who lived through one of the hardest times in American history. He wasn't a Wall Street guy. He wasn't a millionaire playboy. He was a civil engineer, a soldier, and later, a map maker. In fact, in the early 1900s, his company made the first atlas of the US and Canada. He built one of the biggest map companies in America until the Great Depression hit and wiped it all out. But here's the twist. While running that company, Clason had already started writing small booklets about money and personal success. After losing his business, he didn't give up. He himself leaned into those stories and rebuilt himself. And in 1926, he gathered those stories into one small book and gave the world one of the most powerful financial books ever written, The Richest Man in Babylon. But why Babylon? Because Clason believed that's where money wisdom was born. A place with no forests, no oil fields, no gold mines, just people who used discipline, hard work, and smart thinking to build one of the wealthiest cities in history. For nearly 100 years, this little book has helped millions of people take control of their financial future. And here's the best part. These lessons still work today. Just think, if a broke mapmaker from Denver could rebuild his fortune using these same lessons, what could they do for you? So if you've ever felt overwhelmed by money, if you've ever wanted to feel confident with your finances, or if you've just wished someone would explain things clearly, then this video is for you. Because in this video, I'll walk you through every chapter, every parable, every golden nugget, one story at a time. So, are you ready? Because Babylon is calling. Let's begin. A historical sketch of Babylon. Have you ever wondered how one of the richest cities in all of history was built in the middle of a hot, dry desert? No forests, no gold mines, hardly any rain. Sounds more like a place where nothing could prosper, right? And yet, Babylon, the name we now associate with wealth, gold, and glory, rose from this barren land to become the financial center of the ancient world. But how? That's what we're about to uncover. Because what built Babylon wasn't luck or location. It was wisdom, the kind that still works, even 4,000 years later. Close your eyes and imagine you're walking along the cracked earth of a flat valley. The sun is beating down. The wind carries dust across your sandals. There's no forest in sight, no hills, just silence. Now look again, and suddenly, there are towering walls, stone temples, and markets buzzing with trade. This is Babylon, and what brought it to life? Just two humble things: soil and a river, the Euphrates River to be exact. The Babylonians didn't sit around hoping to get rich. They got to work. They dug long, deep irrigation canals to pull water from the river and spread it across dry land. They turned dirt into farmland. Imagine taking a patch of dead backyard dirt and turning it into a working farm. That's what they did, on a massive scale. Their canals were so wide that 12 horses could walk side by side through them. And they didn't do it with machines. They did it with discipline, with planning, with the belief that smart work builds strong cities. Now here's where Babylon becomes even more impressive. The kings of Babylon weren't obsessed with conquering lands or building empires. They cared about farming, trade, engineering, law. That create, not conquer mindset is what made Babylon thrive. But Babylon wasn't just rich in grain and goods. It was rich in ideas too. The Babylonians were some of the first people to use real coins for trade. They invented things like loan contracts, receipts, promissory notes, and even interest rates. They kept records on clay tablets, neatly stored in temples and homes. Babylon was like the Dubai of its time. But here's the kicker. They built it without machines, without computers, and without electricity. Just hands, brains, and clear priorities. So what's the real message here? It's this. You don't need perfect conditions to build wealth. You just need to work with what you've got and be smart about it. That's what the Babylonians did. They used their brains more than their brawn. They built wealth one trade, one law, one lesson at a time. And 4,000 years later, their secrets still work. As Clason, the author of this timeless book, puts it simply, money is plentiful for those who understand the simple laws that govern it. And those laws haven't changed today. Now that you've seen how Babylon became a symbol of wealth, let me ask you something. What if the road to riches starts not with gold, but with desire? Not greed, not fantasy, but a real hunger to live better. That's exactly what we'll explore in the next chapter. We'll meet a man with no gold in his purse, but a burning desire in his heart. So stay with me, because your journey to wealth begins right here. Chapter 1. The Man Who Desired Gold. Have you ever looked at your life and wondered, why am I always working so hard, but still feel stuck? Or maybe you've asked, I make money, but where does it all go? If that sounds familiar, you're not alone, because that's exactly how Bansir felt. He was one of the best chariot builders in all of Babylon, but even with all his skill, his purse still hung flat at his side. His stomach growled louder than the marketplace. And his dreams, they felt like smoke in the wind, there and then gone. But what changed for Bansir started with a single question, and by the end of this chapter, you'll not only know what that question was, but also start asking it yourself. Let's dive in. Bansir sat on a wall outside his home, staring at a half-finished chariot. His wife peeked through the curtain, hoping he'd get back to work, but he just sat there, sweaty, tired, and deep in thought. His best friend, Cobby, a cheerful musician, walked by and joked, "You must be rich if you're relaxing in the middle of the day." But Bansir didn't smile. He told Cobby about a dream he had the night before. In that dream, he was wealthy, truly wealthy. He tossed coins to beggars, wrapped his wife in soft silks, and walked with pride through the market. People smiled at him. He felt secure for the first time in his life. But then, he woke up, and his purse was still empty. His wife was still hoping. His tools were still waiting, and the chariot was still unfinished. He looked at Cobby and asked, "Why can't I keep any of the money I earn?" Cobby blinked and then nodded slowly. "I asked myself the same thing." They talked for hours that day. Two skilled men, one a craftsman, the other a musician. realizing that they had spent their whole lives working. They could build, they could entertain, they could feed their families, but their purse emptied faster than they could refill it. And that's where the first great lesson of this chapter lands. A fat purse quickly empties if there is no golden stream to refill it. Now, during their conversation, Bansir suddenly asked a question that stuck with Kobi. He said, "What if the rich people of Babylon know something we don't? Maybe we need more than just work. Maybe we need wisdom. Maybe wealth isn't just luck or blessings from the gods. Maybe it's a skill, something we could learn." And that's when they remembered someone from their youth, Arkad. He wasn't always rich. In fact, he started off just like them, humble and hardworking. But now, Arkad rode golden chariots. He dined with kings. He was known as the richest man in Babylon. So Bansir and Kobi made a decision. They wouldn't just work harder. They would find Arkad and ask him, "How did you do it?" And in that moment, something shifted. For the first time, they weren't waiting for gold to come to them. They were seeking the truth for themselves. And that choice changed everything. So what can you take away from this story? It's this. If you don't like your financial reality, don't just work harder. Get wiser. You already have skills. You already know how to work. But to build wealth, you also need understanding about income, saving, and how to create systems that keep your purse full, even when you're not swinging a hammer or strumming a lyre. Like Bansir and Kobi, maybe it's time to stop sitting on the wall and start knocking on the doors of wisdom. So now Bansir and Kobi are ready. They're gathering their friends and heading to Arkad's home. But what secrets will the richest man in Babylon reveal? You'll find out in the next chapter. Chapter 2: The Richest Man in Babylon. Now, it's time we meet Arkad, a man whose name is spoken with awe across the city. He lives in a grand house. His servants wear fine clothes, and gold flows to him like water from a spring. But he didn't start rich. He began with nothing but clay under his nails and dreams in his heart. And in this chapter, Arkad reveals the exact same idea that changed everything for him. In fact, it's so simple that most people completely ignore it. But don't let its simplicity fool you, because that simple idea is the seed of all wealth. Let's find it out. Long before Arkad had golden chariots and marble palaces, he worked in a dark workshop, pressing symbols into clay. He was a scribe, copying laws and letters for merchants and nobles. He made just enough to survive. So, how did he become the richest man in Babylon? Let's hear the answer from Arkad himself. One day, Arkad's old friends, including Bansir and Kobi, came over to visit him. They were upset with themselves. One of them, a farmer, said, "We grew up together, ate from the same bowls, studied under the same teachers. So tell us, Arkad, why do you live in a palace while we still live in the dust?" Arkad didn't laugh. He didn't shrug. In fact, he looked them in the eye and said, "You either never learned the laws of building wealth, or you learned them, but didn't follow them." Then, he told them how it all began. Years ago, when Arkad was still poor, he worked late into the night to write a scroll. His hands were sore, his back stiff, but he still worked, because that scroll was for a man named Algamish, a wealthy moneylender. But Algamish wasn't just wealthy, he was wise, a man known for his sharp eye and sharper mind. And when Arkad delivered the scroll, he asked for one thing in return. Not gold, not land, but knowledge. "Tell me, Algamish," he said, "how can I become rich?" Algamish raised an eyebrow and said, "You'll work all night just for an answer." "I will," Arkad said. Then, Algamish leaned close to Arkad and whispered something so simple that it almost sounded like a joke. He said, A part of all you earn is yours to keep. Arkad hesitated and asked, "But all I earn is mine." Algamish laughed and said, "No, my young scribe. You pay the baker, the landlord. You even tip the musicians. But how much do you pay yourself?" Arkad was in complete disbelief after hearing this revelation. But then, Algamish told Arkad the first law of building wealth. He said, "Start by keeping at least one coin out of every 10 you earn, and never spend it." From that day, Arkad saved 10% of everything he earned. At first, it felt slow, even painful, because his friends bought wine and he saved copper. But he pictured it like planting a seed. 1 coin became 2, 2 became 4, like a fig tree, slow at first, but soon bursting with fruit. But then, Arkad made his first mistake. He gave his savings to a brickmaker to invest in rare jewels. The jewels turned out to be fake, and all his savings gone. Arkad was heartbroken. But when Algamish returned, instead of pity, he offered Arkad the second law of building wealth. He said, "Don't ask a brickmaker about jewels, ask a jeweler." In other words, don't take money advice from people who don't know what they're doing. If you want to build a house, ask a builder. If you want to grow wealth, ask someone who has done it. Then Arkad worked harder, saved again, and invested wisely this time. And soon his coins made more coins. But then came the next mistake. With his first real profits, Arkad bought fancy clothes and threw a grand dinner. And when Algamish heard this, he frowned. "You're eating the children of your gold," he said. "That gold could have grown up to work for you. Let it grow, and one day it will feed you forever." This is the third law of building wealth. Let your profits grow. Don't spend them too soon. Now Arkad stopped chasing pleasures and started building his golden army, coins that worked for him day and night. Years later, Algamish returned again to Babylon, older now and looking for a partner. He said to Arkad, "You've now mastered the 3 great laws of wealth. First, pay yourself. Second, take advice from the wise. And third, let your money work for you. Now you are no longer just a scribe. You are ready," Algamish said, and gave Arkad a share in his business. And from that day forward, Arkad's fortune never stopped growing. And here's the last lesson Algamish shared. Success isn't luck, it's preparation. Arkad didn't win a prize. He didn't get lucky. He prepared, he planted, and he grew. And so can you. So what's the main message of this chapter? It's this: a part of all you earn is yours to keep. Because when you save first, listen to wise voices, and let your money grow, you're no longer just working for money. You're making the money work for you. That's the path Arkad took, and it can be yours too. Now Arkad's friends are inspired. They're ready to walk this path, but they still have questions. Well, in the next chapter, the blueprint begins to unfold, and all of their questions will be answered. Chapter 3: 7 Cures for a Lean Purse. Let me ask you this. Why do some people always seem to have money, while others, no matter how hard they work, never seem to get ahead? Is it luck? Inheritance? Magic? Or is it something else? In ancient Babylon, a city of golden temples and bustling markets, King Sargon looked out at his people and saw a troubling sight. Many worked hard, but their purses were still empty. So he summoned Arkad, the richest man in Babylon. "Teach us," the king said. "Share your wisdom, so all may prosper." And so, Arkad handed out cures, 7 of them. 7 timeless steps to turn a lean purse into a fat one. These are timeless truths. They worked thousands of years ago, and they still work today. And now, we'll walk through those same 7 cures, each one a building block to real, lasting wealth. Let's dive in. Cure number 1. Start thy purse to fattening. Arkad stood before the citizens of Babylon and said, "For every 10 coins you earn, spend only 9. Let the 10th remain." Most people nodded, but many didn't believe it was possible. Then Arkad said, "Think of it like feeding a camel. 1 handful a day and it grows strong. The same with your gold. Save 10% of all you earn, no matter how little. Start now. That first coin is your seed." Cure number 2. Control thy expenditures. From the crowd, a man raised his hand and asked, "But I need every coin I earn. I can't save." Arkad smiled and said, "Needs are like water. They fill whatever vessel we give them. The more you earn, the more you think you need. Raise your income, and suddenly, coffee gets fancier, clothes get trendier, and your wallet still empty." The cure? Budget. With purpose. Choose where your gold goes before it slips away. Cure number 3. Guard thy treasures from loss. Arkad asked, "Now that you're saving coins, what do you do with them?" One young man in the crowd said, "I gave my savings to a trader who promised to double it in a week." The crowd laughed, but Arkad did not. Instead, he said, "Misfortune loves a shining purse, so be wise with whom you trust. Never invest in things you don't understand. Protect your gold like a lion guards its cubs." Cure number 4. Make thy gold multiply. This is where wealth truly begins. Once Arkad had saved enough, he loaned his coins to a shield maker. That man paid him interest every month, and soon Arkad's gold was working harder than he was. He said, "Gold, like a worker, will labor gladly if you give it a job." This is the power of investing. The coins you save become your soldiers, earning more gold even while you sleep. That's how you grow wealth, not just by saving, but by multiplying. Cure number 5. Increase thy ability to earn. Even after long days of work, Arkad spent his nights learning, practicing calculations and studying trade routes, because he knew, the more I learn, the more I earn. The 5th cure is about you, your value, your skills. Want to earn more? Become more valuable. Learn a new craft. Improve at your trade. Train your hands and sharpen your mind. Even a single new skill can open a doorway to higher income. Your skills are your best investment. Cure number 6. Make of thy dwelling a profitable investment. Own your home, Arkad said, standing before a crowd of renters. Because when you rent, your money vanishes into another man's purse. Cure number 7. Ensure a future income. Arkad's voice grew quiet when he said this. A man no longer able to earn is a sorrow to see. You won't always be young. Life brings storms, accidents, old age. So prepare now. Save for your future. Build income streams that last. Even small savings over time can grow into a mighty tree of wealth. Start today for the person you'll one day become. So, now you know the cures. You know what to do. You know the habits of wealth. But the next question is, how do you actually put these into action in real life? What's the first move? What if you've already made mistakes? What if you've already lost time or money? Well, in the next chapter, Arkad answers those very questions and guides a group of struggling friends through the journey of turning knowledge into action. Chapter 4. Meet the Goddess of Good Luck. Have you ever looked at someone else's success and thought, they're so lucky? Maybe they landed the perfect job. Maybe they bought the right stock at just the right time. Or maybe they always seem to know when to say yes, while the rest of us hesitate. But what if luck isn't really luck at all? What if good luck can be earned, attracted, or even invited, like a guest into your life? In ancient Babylon, under the warm evening light of the Temple of Learning, a group of curious citizens gathered to ask this exact same question to Akkad. Can we meet the goddess of good luck and win her favor? And the answer they found that night was not only surprising, but it might also change how you see opportunity forever. Let's step into the Temple of Learning and find that answer. The torches flickered along the stone walls of the temple as the group sat in a circle. A young man broke the silence and said, I see lucky people everywhere, but I never feel lucky myself. Heads nodded in agreement. Even 4,000 years ago, everyone wanted good luck. A smile from the gods, a surprise fortune, and a sudden success. But Akkad reminded them gently, wishing is not the same as winning. The goddess of good luck does not favor wishers. She favors workers. Then, a man leaned forward. Surely the goddess of luck lives at the gambling tables, he said with a grin. I once won 5 pieces of silver in one throw of the dice. The crowd laughed. Another man said, what about the horse races? The lucky ones walk away rich. Akkad smiled and asked, how many gamblers have you seen become truly wealthy? The room went quiet. Gambling is built to take more than it gives. No wise man relies on chance to build his fortune, Akkad said. Then, a merchant stepped forward and said in a quiet voice, when I was younger, my father urged me to buy a piece of land near the outer gate. I had the coins, but I hesitated. I spent them on clothes instead. He looked down and said again, that land today is worth 10 times of what it was then. Akkad replied, this isn't a story about luck or chance. It's a story about a missed opportunity. How many times have we said, maybe later, I'll think about it. Now's not the right time. And by the time we're ready, the chance is gone. Another man spoke up. He was a trader in livestock. He said, one night outside the city gates, I was offered a flock of sheep at a low price. It was dark. I couldn't count them. So I said, let's wait until morning. But by sunrise, others had come. They bought the flock, 3 times the price I would have paid. He continued, that night taught me something I never forgot. Good luck often comes dressed as a quick decision. Wait too long, and it's gone. Then a visiting Syrian scholar stood and said, opportunity does not wait for the slow man. He who hesitates loses. Another man added, I always thought I was being careful, but I've come to see it now. It was procrastination. Everyone in the temple could feel it, that familiar voice in our heads. I'll start saving later. I'll send that letter next week. I'll act when I feel ready. But delay is the enemy of good luck, because luck doesn't come to those who wait. It comes to those who act. Now Akkad leaned forward, his voice stronger, and said, no man can succeed until he crushes the spirit of procrastination within him. Some people saw opportunities and acted. They moved, they grew, they thrived. The others, they waited and watched their chances slip through their fingers like sand. Now, by the end of the night, the man who had started the conversation spoke up again. This time, his tone was different. He said, I understand now. Good luck isn't random. It follows action, and opportunity rewards those who step forward. Good luck doesn't just happen. It follows the bold. The others nodded, but it wasn't just agreement. It was a recognition, because during this conversation, they had seen themselves in every missed chance, every delayed decision. So, What can you take away from this chapter? It's this: good luck can be invited, but only by those who act. That means send that email, start that project, make that move before someone else does. Because the goddess of good luck, she favors the bold. She smiles on the prepared. She walks beside the doers, not the dreamers. Now that you know the truth about luck, but what happens when a young man is handed a fortune and no wisdom? Can wealth survive without knowledge? Well, in the next chapter, we hear an interesting story of a son, one that proves wealth isn't just about what you earn, it's about what you know. Chapter 5: The 5 Laws of Gold. Imagine this: you're offered 2 things. 1, a heavy leather bag filled with glittering gold. The other, a small clay tablet with 5 simple rules etched into it. Which would you choose? Most people would grab the gold. It's tempting. It feels good. It solves problems, at least for a while. But here's the truth our card once taught. Gold without wisdom disappears. But wisdom, it can bring you gold for a lifetime. And that's what this chapter is all about. The 5 timeless laws of gold. Lessons passed down through generations in Babylon. If you follow them, they can change your life. And if you ignore them, you'll feel the pain of lost opportunity forever. So settle in, because by the end of this chapter, you won't just learn how to keep money, you'll learn how to make it work for you. Let's dive in. The night was quiet. The stars above Babylon shimmered like tiny coins in the sky. Beside a crackling campfire, an older man named Calabab sat with his young helpers, who had been faithful to him during a long trade journey. As thanks, Calabab leaned forward and said, "Let me share a story with you, a story passed down from Arkad himself." And this is what he told them. Years ago, Arkad called his son, Nomasir, to his chambers. He handed him 2 things: a heavy bag filled with golden coins and a small clay tablet etched with the 5 laws of gold. Arkad said, "Go out into the world, build your own fortune. In 10 years, return and show me what you've learned. If you succeed, I'll give you my full estate. If you fail, it will go to the temple priests." And so, Nomasir set out, gold in hand and wisdom under his arm. At first, Nomasir lived richly. He dressed well, dined often, and invested quickly. He loaned money to men who made big promises. He bought into schemes he barely understood. He chased wealth like it was a game. And soon, his purse was empty. Now, he was all alone in a strange land, with nothing but the clay tablet his father had given him. And instead of giving up, he turned back to the tablet of wisdom, the 5 laws of gold, and that completely changed his financial life. Let's walk through each of those laws together. Law number 1. Gold comes gladly to those who save at least 1/10 of all they earn. Nomasir remembered his father's words, "Pay yourself first." Even when he had only copper coins left, he started setting one aside, out of every 10. It didn't feel like much in the beginning, but slowly and steadily, the purse began to feel heavier. Like a tree planted with one seed, it began to grow. Law number 2. Gold works for the wise owner, who finds it profitable employment. Nomasir found work in a merchant's shop, and when his savings grew, he didn't leave it sitting idle. Instead, he invested it in a caravan. After careful study, the profits came in slowly, but they came. Gold began to work for him even when he slept. Think of it like a flock of sheep. If you care for them, they multiply. And if you ignore them, they wander off. So don't just save. Put your money to work. Law number 3. Gold clings to the cautious owner who seeks the counsel of wise men. This time, before investing, Nomasir asked the older traders for advice. He listened to them. He asked questions. He learned. And what he found was this: the wise don't guess. They seek understanding. By choosing steady, trusted investments, he protected what he earned. No more foolish risks. No more blind trust. Law number 4. Gold slips away from those who invest in things they do not understand. Nomasir thought back to the camel trader who had sold him shares in a spice ship that never came back. He didn't ask where the ship came from, didn't meet the captain, didn't study the trade. That mistake cost him half his fortune. But now, if he didn't fully understand anything, he didn't invest. Simple as that. Law number 5. Gold flees from those who try to force it to grow quickly or follow foolish advice. Here's the truth. Get rich quick is get poor fast. If something sounds too good to be true, it probably is. A traveling stranger once promised to triple Nomasir's money in a week. It sounded exciting, but Nomasir smiled and walked away, because now he had learned patience grows gold and greed burns it to ash. Now 10 years have passed, and when Nomasir returned home, he didn't bring back 1 bag of gold. He brought 3, not because of luck, not because of talent, but because he followed the 5 laws of gold. His father embraced him and gladly handed him over his entire estate. So now you know the 5 laws of gold. But what happens when someone has gold, yet doesn't know what to do with it? What if pressure comes from family, from friends, and from your own fear of missing out? In the next chapter of our journey, you'll meet a man who earns gold, not by accident, but by brilliance. And yet, the real challenge begins after the gold is in his hands. So hang tight, because the stories ahead get even more interesting. Chapter 6. The Gold Lender of Babylon. Have you ever received an unexpected sum of money? A bonus? A gift? A refund? And suddenly, everyone around you has ideas for how you should use it. That's exactly what happened to Rodan, a hard-working spearmaker in ancient Babylon. One day, the king rewarded him with 50 pieces of gold for designing a brilliant new spear tip. That was more than he had ever dreamed of holding in his hands. But his joy didn't last long, because the moment coins clinked into his pouch, came pressure, questions, and quiet fears. His sister asked for a loan. Friends pitched great ideas. His mind raced with possibilities. But Rodan did something most don't. He didn't spend it. He didn't lend it. Instead, he went looking for wisdom. Rodan stepped into the cool, lantern-lit shop of Mathan, Babylon's most trusted moneylender. The room smelled of cedar and leather. Small golden weights sat neatly on a stone table. Behind it, Mathan, a man of calm eyes and careful words. "I've come for counsel," Rodan said. "My sister's husband wanted the gold to start a merchant business, but I'm feeling uneasy." Mathan didn't answer immediately. Instead, he told him a story. Once, Mathan said, there was a farmer whose ox and donkey shared a stable. One day, the ox complained to the donkey and said, "All day I plow, while you rest. I wish I could take a day off." The donkey, trying to be kind, said, "Then pretend to be sick tomorrow." So the next day, the ox lay down, groaning. The farmer believed him and took the donkey to the plow instead. Kindness Mathan said, "should not make a fool of you." The donkey tried to help the ox, but ended up carrying the whole burden himself. Then, Mathan walked over to a wooden chest and opened it slowly. Inside were small tokens, objects left behind by borrowers over the years. He held up a silver comb and said, "This belonged to a man who borrowed gold to please his demanding wife. He never repaid." Next, he lifted a wooden figurine and said, "This belonged to a man who backed his son's merchant dream, with no training, no plan. His gold vanished, and so did his son." And then Mathan said, "Some borrowers succeeded, but most did not. The difference? A plan, experience, and the ability to repay." Then, Mathan told Roden, "There are 3 kinds of borrowers. First, those with property, like land, livestock, or something of value. If they fail, they can repay by selling assets. Second, those with steady income, like skilled workers or merchants. They can repay over time. And third, those with nothing but dreams, no income, no assets, just hope. The third is the most dangerous," Mathan warned, "because hope doesn't repay gold." Then Mathan asked, "Does your sister's husband have merchant experience?" Roden shook his head. "No." "Has he bought or sold goods before?" "No." "Does he have a plan? A location? Reliable buyers?" Again, "No." Now Mathan leaned back and said, "Then don't lend him 50 pieces of gold." Roden's face fell. "But if you must help," Mathan continued, "test him. Lend only what you can afford to lose. If he succeeds, he'll prove his worth. If he fails, you'll still have the rest of the gold." "Better a little caution," Mathan said, "than a great regret. Now let's bring this into your world. Imagine you've saved $10,000 over 5 years. Your cousin, who's never run a business, asks for $9,000 to launch a new app idea. Now, just like Mathan, you must ask him the following questions before lending your hard-earned money. Do you have experience? A business plan? A path to profit? Can you repay if your idea fails? And if the answer is no, the wise choice is clear. Now, before Roden left, Mathan asked him one last question. "What do you want the most from your gold?" Roden answered, "To keep it safe." Mathan nodded. "And next?" Roden smiled. "To make it grow." "That's the golden balance," Mathan said. "Safety and growth. Protect your wealth at first, and then put it to work. But only when the path is clear. Never lend just to feel generous. Real help lifts both people, and false help sinks you both." So what's the big takeaway from this chapter? It's this. You're not selfish for protecting what you've earned. You're wise. Helping others is noble, but it should never leave you broken, bitter, or bankrupt. If someone you care about asks for help, ask the right questions. Protect your gold. Don't mistake emotional decisions for wise ones. So now that you've learned how to lend with wisdom and guard what you've earned, but not all threats come wrapped in smiles and promises. Some arrive with no warning, like a storm on the horizon. And when that storm hits, gold won't be enough. You'll need something stronger. Not luck, not hope, but walls, built long before the danger appeared. What comes next isn't about gold coins, it's about survival. Chapter 7. The Walls of Babylon. Have you ever had a moment in life when everything felt uncertain? Maybe you lost a job. Maybe a health scare came out of nowhere. Maybe an unexpected bill knocked the breath out of you. And in those moments, all you wanted, more than money, more than answers, was to feel safe. In this chapter, we return to Babylon, not to talk about gold or trade, but something even more important: security. This is the story of a siege, of an enemy at the gates, and of a city that was saved, not by hope or chance, but by preparation. So let's meet the people of Babylon and discover how their greatest defense became one of their greatest lessons. The Siege of Babylon. The Assyrians, a brutal and powerful enemy, were marching toward Babylon with an army of thousands. Babylon's soldiers were far away, defending another land, and standing at the city gate, armor glinting in the light, was an old warrior named Banzar. The people, terrified, but still, no one ran. Why? Because towering above the city were the great walls of Babylon, massive, thick, and built by hands. As word of the Assyrian army spread, a crowd gathered at the gate. "Will we be safe? Will the walls hold?" they asked Banzar. Banzar looked them in the eye, calm and steady, and said, "The walls of Babylon will protect you." Not a boast, not a guess, but just a reminder that protection had already been built long before the threat appeared. The walls of Babylon weren't thrown up in a panic. They were planned, designed, and strengthened over time, because you don't wait until the enemy arrives to start building your defenses. But today, our enemies look different. Not armies, not soldiers, but emergencies. A job loss, a sudden illness, a broken car, and your walls aren't stone. They're things like an emergency fund, an insurance for your health, home, or income, a will to protect your family, a plan for the unexpected. And here's the thing, they don't feel urgent until they do. But like Babylon's walls, they become the most valuable thing you've ever built. So ask yourself now, can I survive 1 month without income? Can I cover an unexpected medical bill? Will my family be protected if I'm not here tomorrow? If the answer is no, that's not a failure. It's just a sign that it's time to start building your walls, because the enemy never announces its arrival. So here's the big takeaway from this chapter. We cannot afford to be without protection. The people of Babylon didn't celebrate when the walls were built. They celebrated when the Assyrians finally turned away, defeated not by swords, but by stone walls that never broke. Like the great walls of Babylon, we all need walls: financial walls, emotional walls, and protective habits that guard our future. We often think strength is about how much we earn, but real strength is about how prepared we are when things go wrong. So what can you do right now? Start an emergency fund, even if it's just $10 a week. Get the right insurance, not just the cheapest. Write a will, no matter your age. Build savings slowly, like bricks in a wall. Your future deserves more than just hope. It deserves protection, so that when the storm comes, you'll stand behind the walls you built and breathe easier, knowing they'll hold. Now that we've talked about building protection, but what if the problem isn't the enemy at the gate? It's the chains of debt wrapped around your ankles. In the next chapter, we meet a man buried in debt, crushed by what he owes. But with relentless effort and unshakable resolve, he shattered the chains of debt and reclaimed his freedom. Chapter 8: The Camel Trader of Babylon. Have you ever felt completely stuck? Too deep in debt? Too far gone to fix your situation? Like you've messed up so badly that there's no way back? Well, if that sounds familiar, you're not alone. And this chapter, this story, is for you. It's about a man named Dabasir, once free and proud, who lost everything, became a slave, and nearly died in the desert. But he didn't stay there, because he made one decision and clawed his way back to honor, freedom, and wealth. And that decision? You can make it too. So let me tell you his story, because in it lies a lesson that could completely shift the way you see your life, your money, and your future. So let's start at the beginning, not with success, but with shame, hunger, and a young man running from what he owed. Picture this. The sun is high. The streets are crowded. The scent of roasted grain drifts through the air. And a young man named Tarkad walks the market with hollow eyes. He hasn't eaten in 2 days. The only thing in his belly? A few stolen figs. Then he spots Dabasir, the camel trader of Babylon, seated in the shade, enjoying a generous meal. Tarkad freezes, because he owes Dabasir money, but instead of scolding him, Dabasir waves him over, offers him a seat, hands him a jug of water. Then, as Tarkad gulps it down, Dabasir leans in and says, "Let me tell you my own life story. It might be worth more than food." Once, Dabasir was a simple saddle maker, not rich, but free. He had a wife, a home, and a future, but he wanted more comfort, more pleasure, more things. So he spent beyond his means. He borrowed, promised, delayed, debts piled up, friends turned away, his wife left, and then he ran. He fled the city, tried to start over, but failed, and eventually he was captured, sold, shackled. Dabasir became a slave in a foreign land, but fortunately, his owner's wife was a kind woman named Sira. Dabasir told her the truth about his debts, his shame, his escape. She listened and then asked, "Do you call yourself a free man when you let weakness chain you?" And then she said something that cut through his heart. No man can respect himself if he does not repay honest debts. That night, Dabasir couldn't sleep. He stared at the ceiling and asked himself, "Do I have the soul of a free man or the soul of a slave?" And he made his decision. With Sira's help, Dabasir escaped into the desert on camelback with a bag of dates and a skin of water. But the desert was cruel. The days were hot, the nights freezing. Food ran out, water ran dry. At one point, Dabasir collapsed into the sand, weak, trembling, alone. But then he remembered Sira's words and whispered to himself, "I am not a slave. I will not die here." He rose. Step by step, he pushed forward, until finally, he saw Babylon on the horizon. Now Dabasir didn't sneak back in. He walked through the city gates, with his head held high, and then, one by one, he went to the men he owed. He didn't beg. He didn't hide. "I have returned," he said, "and I will repay every coin as the gods permit." Some mocked him. Some believed him. One man, Mathan, the gold lender, offered him work. From there, Dabasir met Nebatur, a camel trader, and started working for him. He worked hard, learned fast, and earned steadily. And in time, Dabasir repaid every debt, not with luck, not with magic, but with honor, discipline, and one small decision. So what can we learn from Dabasir's journey? It's this: where the determination is, the way can be found. No matter how far you've fallen, no matter how deep the hole, if you decide to rise, you'll find a path, just like Dabasir. The only real failure is giving up on yourself. The only real success is earning back your self-respect. Money comes and goes, but dignity, that stays. Dabasir rebuilt his wealth after he rebuilt his character, and it all started with one powerful decision. I will take back control of my life. If you've ever felt broken, behind, or like it's too late, let this moment be your turning point. If you're crawling through your own desert, don't stop now, because like Dabasir, you might be one decision away from seeing your Babylon on the horizon. Now, Dabasir didn't just leave behind a story. He left behind a plan, a simple plan etched into clay. And that plan? It didn't die with him in the sands of Babylon. Years later, it was found, written on a clay tablet, buried deep in the ruins of this ancient city. And what was written on it wasn't magic. It was a real, step-by-step plan to take control of your money and your life. It helped people thousands of years ago, and it's still helping people today. And in the next chapter, we'll uncover that exact same plan from the clay tablets. Chapter 9. The Clay Tablets from Babylon. Imagine stumbling on a message from the past, etched in clay, not about treasure maps or ancient kings, but about how to finally control your money, pay your bills, and build real wealth. Sounds too good to be true, right? Well, that's exactly what happened when a group of archaeologists uncovered a series of tablets buried deep in the ruins of old Babylon. What they found wasn't just history. It was a simple, powerful financial plan that could change lives. And the best part, it has already helped others escape their debt and build wealth. So let's dive straight into that plan, because what's written on those clay tablets will change the way you think about money forever. Picture this: ancient Babylon. A man named Dabasir, once a slave in Syria, made a promise to himself. He was tired of running from his debts. He wanted to stand tall again in his hometown of Babylon. So, he created a plan and pressed it into clay with a wooden stylus. And that plan, it was very simple. It had just 3 key steps. First, keep 1/10 of all you earn. Second, use 7/10 to live. Stuff like food, rent, clothes, and life in general. And third, use the remaining 2/10 to pay off debts. That's it. Every month, no matter how little he made, no matter how tempting it was to spend more, he stuck to the plan. He saved. He lived within his means. And slowly, month by month, his chains broke. The creditors stopped knocking. His pride returned. Even his wife came back. Now he had savings in his purse and respect in his city. Now fast forward to 1934. A British professor named Alfred Shrewsbury finds these ancient tablets, translates them, and decides to test the plan for himself. But why? Because he and his wife were drowning in debt. Creditors were breathing down their necks. They were barely scraping by. Bills were piling up. No savings. And a sinking feeling every time the mail arrives. So the professor turns to his wife and says, "What if we try this plan?" They sit down at their kitchen table with a pen and paper, and they listed every debt they owed. Then they promised each creditor 2/10 of their monthly income. No more, no less. They lived on 7/10, and they began saving the rest 1/10, just like Dabasir. And the result, it wasn't magic, it wasn't fast, but it worked. Little by little, their debt shrank, their savings grew, and most importantly, they stopped feeling helpless. Their fear lifted. That tightness in the chest, gone. Now they had money in the bank. They found new ways to save. They even began investing, all because of a 4,000-year-old budgeting plan written in the dust of a forgotten empire. That plan worked for Dabasir. It worked for Professor Shrewsbury. And now, it's your turn. Maybe your debt feels like a mountain. Maybe your budget is a mess. Maybe you're tired of always feeling behind. But here's what Dabasir teaches us. You don't have to be rescued. You just have to begin. This plan doesn't require you to earn more. It doesn't ask for perfection. It only asks for discipline, consistency, courage to face the truth and act anyway. So here's the big takeaway from this chapter. Even small actions over time creates a powerful change. Feeling stuck, frustrated, ashamed of your debt? You don't need more guilt. You don't need a miracle. All you need is a promise to save 10% of everything you earn, to live on 70%, and to pay your debts with the remaining 20% every month. Write it down. Post it on your mirror. Make it your habit. Start today, not next month, not when you get a raise. Start with what you have. And if Dabasir could do it, with nothing but camels, coins, and courage, so can you. Now, in the next chapter, we return to the streets of Babylon for one last time and meet a man who has everything to gain or everything to lose based on one choice. It's a story of discipline, of small actions. Chapter 10. The Luckiest Man in Babylon. Have you ever looked at someone successful and thought, wow, they must have gotten lucky? The clothes, the car, the confidence. It's easy to assume they had a head start, a lucky break, or someone else paving the way. But what if I told you one of the richest, most respected men in Babylon once stood in chains, sold at auction like an object, and what turned his life around wasn't luck, but something far more powerful, and something you already have. This is the story of pain, persistence, and redemption. This is the story of Sharu Nada, a man who lost everything and built it all back, not with gold, but with grit. So come with me, because the caravan is moving toward Babylon for the last time, and into one of the most inspiring lessons of this entire book. Picture this. The desert wind blew softly over the caravan trail. At the front rode Sharu Nada, a merchant, respected trader, and master of wealth. Beside him sat a young man, Hayden Gula. His garments were fine. His fingers were glittering with rings. His voice was full of entitlement. He was the grandson of Arad Gula, Sharu's old friend and former business partner. And when he asked, "Why do you still work so hard, Sharu? You're rich," Sharu turned to him, eyes weathered but kind, and said, "Let me tell you how I got here." Years ago, Sharu walked into Babylon in chains. He had been sold into slavery, not for his crime, but for the debts and failures of his brother. He was afraid, ashamed, and a prisoner of fate. But then, he met a fellow slave named Megiddo. Megiddo looked him in the eye and said, "Work hard, be valuable, and one day you may walk free." Sharu listened. In the slave market, he offered himself boldly to a baker named Nananaid and said, "Take me, I'll learn quickly, and I'll earn my keep." And he did. Soon he was baking bread, then honey cakes, then selling them on the streets of Babylon. He didn't wait to be rescued. He worked, and people noticed. One day, a kind man came to the bakery. His name? Arad Gula, a merchant with sharp eyes and a generous spirit. He saw something in Sharu, not just a slave, but a man becoming something greater. And Arad Gula bought his freedom by breaking the clay tablet that marked him as property. But he didn't stop there. He made Sharu a business partner, because Arad himself had once been a slave. His path, like Sharu's, had been carved not by luck, but by discipline and sweat. Throughout his life, Shahroo saw many men make different choices, but not every man rose. Some fell by the choices they made. Shahroo saw it with his own eyes. Zabado avoided hard work and ended up starving in rags. A pirate chose violence and was flogged and left for dead. But Megiddo, the wise slave, he worked, he rose, became a respected overseer, and one day returned to his family, a free man. And throughout this all, one truth burned in Shahroo's mind. Work is not a punishment. It is the only path. Even when he had nothing, he still had the power to work, and that power was enough to rebuild everything. Now, as Shahroo finished his story, the caravan slowed. The sun dipped low behind the walls of Babylon. Hayden Gula was quiet now. He looked down at his silk clothes, his golden rings, his soft hands that had never labored. And then, without a word, he removed his jewelry, dismounted from his fine camel, and walked beside Shahroo, no longer a spoiled heir, but a student. Because for the first time in his life, he had understood. True wealth isn't inherited, it's earned. So what's the big takeaway from this chapter? It's this: work is not a punishment. It is your superpower. Whether you're starting over, digging out of debt, or trying to build something better, the ability to show up, work hard, and add value is the foundation of real success. Shahroo Nada didn't wait for someone to save him. He baked, he sold, he served, and in doing so, he built a life of wealth and purpose. Work done well doesn't just build wealth, it builds you. You don't need luck, you need wisdom, you need action, and now you have both. And that's the end of The Richest Man in Babylon by George Samuel Clason. I hope these timeless lessons serve you well, as they have for thousands of years. Thank you for joining me on this journey.